Biblical texts say there's a time lock on human life based on the telomeres. Our time lock is 120 years. Why the Gnostic texts talk about why that time lock was given. Not all of the Elohim agreed with it. Some of them wanted us to be full-on God-like beings. Others wanted us to have limited powers. Then you start getting into move away from the religious texts and you look at just historic documents from Mesopotamia. You look at the Babylonian creation story and the Sumerian texts. They're telling a very similar story without the religion. And in place of Elohim, they have words like Anunnaki and the biblical texts of Nephilim. So different stories, essentially with the same theme, that we're not from around here. We are a hybrid form of life given the potential of extraordinary abilities when we accept the responsibility that comes with having those abilities. And it's kind of it's a chicken and an egg kind of thing. As we accept and become, the word that they use is our divine potential. As we accept and embrace that in our lives, the acceptance is chemically what opens those potentials in our lives and in our bodies. And then we begin to age differently. We begin to metabolize differently. We begin to think differently. We intuit differently. And all of these.
Do you think that's what's happening now?
I do. I think that's exactly what's happening. I think it's happening to some people. There are some who are resisting, but I think the conditions of the world, and this is where the ancient Civ comes in, because as a geologist, what I can tell you is on a cyclic basis, beginning in the center of our universe, there is a volley of information in the form of cosmic rays that appear every 12 to 13,000 years. And that volley of information disturbs the core of our planet and sends us into shifts that force us to change the way we think and the way we live. So we've got a cosmological clock, and this is what I'm going to talk about it in Gaia, by the way, in August, Ancient Civ. We've got a cosmic clock driving geophysical processes under our feet that directly linked to the, I hesitate to use the word, but it's to the consciousness and the biology. They're intimately linked together. So we have a lot of help. The bottom line is we have a lot of help, and we're all at the precipice of a doorway that's opening in front of us. And whether we choose to accept our potential and step through that doorway is a personal choice. And this is where the suffering comes from. A lot of people are resisting. We resist our power. That is where the suffering comes from. We're barreling down the path of a cyclic event that drives the kinds of shifts and the paradigm shifts that forever change the world and life in the world. And it's only now that we are within the window of time, and I can say this, within the window of time geologically, when these cycles have occurred in the past. Cosmologically, we're within the window of time. And then we can look socially and politically at the world. We can see that the unsustainable systems are buckling and collapsing. We're moving towards some kind of a new paradigm. My sense is that we don't want that new world based on the hurt and the suffering and the atrocities that we all have seen in our lifetimes in the 20th and now the 21st centuries. And the way to transcend that, I think, and this is, I think, the message of everything we're saying, we are not what we have been told, and we are so much more. We're more, Robert, than we have probably even dared to allow ourselves to think about our own being. And if we embrace not even the whole picture, just embrace a little of that, what that does, it shifts that trajectory away from a future of suffering and war into an uncharted future based upon the way we are learning to think about ourselves. Because all the tech, AI, nuclear weapons, genetic engineering, CRISPR, whatever it is, it's just tech. It's not good, bad, right, or wrong. It's the thinking underlying how it's used. And as we embrace the deep truth of who we are as a society and individuals, that will be reflected in the choices that we make with that technology. That's how you build a new world.
So who do you think we are? I'm interested to hear your feeling on that. What is the extent of our majesty and our capacity and our divinity
Well, those are
in your feeling?
Yeah, those are three different qualities. I believe that we, what the evidence suggests, is that we are a hybrid species. And if what's fascinating, Robert, when you look at some of these texts that were left out, they describe the creation of the first human by the Elohim. And it wasn't a one-off. They had multiple iterations of failures before they achieved, and here's the key, before they achieved the chemical code that would hold the light of a human soul in the physical body. So we are this hybrid where we have godlike powers that were given to us by a higher intelligence. And for the first time, those powers are imbued into a physicality that allows things that were never allowed before, sensuality in the world and the physicality of the world. And I think we're in uncharted territory in terms of how we embrace those powers in our lives. It's not about leaving the world, not about leaving the earth, but it's about transforming ourselves and transforming the world by embracing the deep truth of who we are. And that's the point of every book that I write and every talk that I give, different facets of it, because it's a big, big story, a big story. And you're doing the same. And I love the way that you come at this from as a mathematician, because those numbers don't lie. I mean, the numbers are the numbers. And in gematria, when you might have two words that look very different, if they have the same number, it means you're talking about the same thing. Heaven and soul in Hebrew gematria, two different words, they have the same number. They're talking about the same thing.
Now, which do you normally use? Hebrew gematria? Do you use simple gematria, or do you use Greek? Do you use all of them?
I use all of them. What's interesting, in the West, when I'm deriving this message, I'll typically do it from Hebrew because many people are familiar with Kabbalah and things like that. But when I'm in the Middle East, if I'm in Cairo, I can do this in Arabic, and it's the same thing, exactly the same thing in Arabic. Or when I was in the Holy Lands, I would do it both in Hebrew and Arabic, showing that as different as they believe they are from one another, we need look no further than the DNA in every cell of our bodies to say that the message is exactly the same. I've never presented anywhere where I needed to use cuneiform, although it works. And Sanskrit I used to lead groups into Tibet, 12 monasteries, 2 nunneries over 26 days. And then the Tibetans, when they see this in their language of Sanskrit, it's more meaningful to them because that is the language of their traditions, the original Sanskrit. And it may very well work in other languages. I haven't, life is
probably does. It probably works in all languages. Somehow consciousness makes it work.
Well, I think it would work in others. I chose these were what are called the root or the core languages that linguists will typically look at, from which other languages are derived. So that was why I looked at those, the 4 root languages. And there are languages that we know that we've used in the past that have been lost. And there's a story about the relationship between those languages and the angles of light coming through a 4-sided pyramid of pure quartz, creating the letters of those languages in the shadows that are cast in the concentric circles around them. So what it says is our languages are derived from the relationship between light and the most stable form that we have, the pyramid in this world, and that there are languages that were probably part of this that have been lost in the past. It may be, we've got 23 languages right now on planet Earth that have been discovered, and we have no idea what they say. They have never been deciphered. AI is helping with some of those. The Indus Valley is one of those, and they're using AI now to try to help decipher that. But 23 languages, what do those languages tell us about our past and our relationship to the world that is meaningful today? There's a lifetime of study for somebody right there.
So is it safe to say that what you started off in saying, that the Gnostic text, it talks about how humanity is basically, we are angels that forgot we were angels, in a way. Does that resonate for you?
Well, in the language of that belief system, that resonates. And if for those who are not biblically or religiously inclined, we go to the historic documents of Mesopotamia, the Akkadian text, Babylonian, Sumerian, all in cuneiform. And what they say is that we are a hybrid alien, if you want to use that term, or Anunnaki blood. And the texts actually say that one of their kind was sacrificed to take their body and mix it with earthly materials to become who we are. We are a hybrid, and that Roland Emmerich in the movie Prometheus, that is what is portrayed. In the very first scene is a being coming to Earth, sacrificing his own body, and he drinks a substance. His body disintegrates, his DNA goes into the water, and we're off to the races. So that's where that came from, that very idea that we are a hybrid of a higher intelligence. I think what's important is not to get hung up in the weeds of the individual story because of the baggage that comes with the stories.
Sure.
If we look at the themes, all of them say that we're not what we've been told, we're more than we've been led to believe, and that we were imbued by a greater intelligence with extraordinary potentials that we are only beginning to understand, that are available to us if we are willing to accept those potentials. And then the language that we wrap around that, and if we're willing to accept the responsibility of living in the way that those potentials allow us. And the language that wraps around that, I think, is where people get stuck.
So I guess the key takeaway I'm taking away from this is that we are more than we are led to believe, for sure.
Yeah.
And that we have a future that is continually evolving, but that we have choices along the way in order to align to that reality or to stick with a reality that's more base and what we've been.
We are at a crossroad where we have to move into a future if we're going to keep this world and the life that we have known in the past. I think there's a bifurcation that's happening in society. There are two parallel societies that are emerging right now. One aspect is all in on all of the tech in the world and in their bodies. Another one is going back to a simpler way of life, going back to the basics, but opening the door to deeper potentials within themselves. Ultimately, I think we'll find a middle ground. I think what we'll find, Robert, is we will accept technology in the world and allow us to develop our own inner technology, our own soft technology of consciousness. And I think the conditions of the world are driving us to do that now sooner than later, rather than just meandering down the road of it happens when it happens. I think in some ways there's a cosmic clock. And it's what I call a sense of graceful urgency. Graceful in the sense that we have the time that we need to accept the truth of who we are and live our lives differently. Urgent in the sense that if we're going to do it, now is the time. The hardest thing for me was to break that programming. And I didn't even realize how deeply the programming ran until I began looking for the code within the human DNA. And the only way, if I was only a geneticist, I would never find it. because I'd be looking only at DNA. And if I was only a linguist studying
Right.
ancient cultures, I would never find it. If I was only a chemist looking at the stuff we're made of on the periodic table, we'd never find it. You've got to cross those traditional boundaries. And man, it sounds simple now, but it's a hard thing to break that programming. And I lost all credibility as a scientist, when I began to do that. And there's a point where you have to say, what is the price that you're willing to pay? And is it possible to follow your passion with kindness and hurting other people as little as possible? And I think for me, I still look for that answer, but I think that the only way we can answer that is to be honest, truthful, factual, and kind, and say, this is my calling. This is what makes my soul sing. My last day on earth, if I left this world and I didn't share what it is that I have found here, would I feel complete within myself? And if the answer is no, then you know where that path is leading. And for other people, it's not their path. So it was hard, and it was worth it to me. And it is that passion, I think, that allowed me to cross those traditional boundaries, lose my reputation in the scientific community. I don't publish white papers in the journal Nature. I could, but I don't do that now, because I think we're at a point where it's important to take the information directly to our community, because the timeline is so brief. We're in it. We're in this shift. The only way out of it is to go through it. And if you wait 8 or 10 years for a peer-reviewed paper to catch up with you, it's too late.